Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Simon Mills. I'm a senior associate at the ZN Group, and I would like to welcome you all to today's FS Club webinar, where we're going to be discussing the use of satellite technology for assessing global terrestrial carbon stocks. Now, I am joined by Kalpo Vormansik, the CEO and co-founder of Kappa Zeta, a space-based remote sensing company with a focus on agriculture, whose head office is in Tartu, Estonia. Now, as always, the agenda for this webinar is very simple. Following my introduction, our speaker is going to make their presentation, and then we'll move on to the Q&A session. But I'm afraid you're all muted, and you are able to submit your questions through the chat tool, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. Do chip in at any point in the proceedings. I'm going to be collating your question, and I will put them to our speaker at the end. As with all of our FS Club webinars, we're going to be recording this session, and you're going to be able to access the slides and the presentation at a later date. But before we move on, I really must thank FS Club members who've opened up our webinar series to the public. With their help, since March of 2020, we have held over 500 of these events on topics as diverse as money laundering, the metaverse, and high salinity agriculture. The FS Club is the premier global executive knowledge network for technology and finance, where members and their guests can meet over a glass of wine to debate key issues which impact on financial services, technology, and society. It's very much like a 21st century version of the city's 17th century coffee houses. And so, without further ado, I would like to introduce today's speaker. Kalpo, tell us about the use of satellite technology for assessing global terrestrial carbon stocks.
Thank you. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk with you. Do you see my screen?
Yep, you're coming through clear.
Okay, very good. And now when I start sharing screen 2, very good. And I hope you see the slides now.
Yep, that's working fine.
Perfect. So I am Kalpo Vormansik. I'm a scientist, became an entrepreneur. I was 5 years ago, I was still doing active research, and still I haven't lost the skill, I hope. I will talk very briefly about myself and our company, then how the terrestrial carbon stock is assessed currently with satellite technology, and a new mission what we think would help us to take it to the next level. I have a PhD in physics, more specifically on synthetic aperture radar. So my key expertise is on radar remote sensing. I also have I have double masters, one from International Space University, France, and another in computer science in University of Tartu. My synthetic aperture radar knowledge I built up while I was a visiting researcher in German Aerospace Center in 2011-12 and 2014. I have also built actual space hardware, being the systems engineer of first Estonian satellite, which was successfully launched in 2013. So this year we celebrated 10 years from its launch. We founded Kappa Zeta 8 years ago as a spin-off of University of Tartu. Currently we have a team of 16 people, 6 PhDs. We concentrate on radar technology and AI. AI is not that unique, everybody uses it. We also do take advantage of it, but radar expertise is a little more unique, and very few Earth observation companies in Europe master radar remote sensing at the same level as we do. Few months ago, we raised our first investment round to grow faster, close to €500,000. And this is briefly about about myself and our company. So first of all, when we go to satellite technology for terrestrial carbon stock assessment, then we can ask why we should use this technology. It has just a single disadvantage and actually a lot of advantages. And the only disadvantage is that it is slightly lower accuracy than if you would do it with airborne methods like LiDAR or in situ measurements. People going and physically measuring the trees and if you wish, cutting the green biomass and weighting it. By the way, what we have done in our research history. But using satellite technology has a list of advantages. Firstly, it's truly global coverage. It is unthinkable to cover the same areas with drones with reasonable cost. Then the updates are really frequent. LiDAR data can be many years old, but satellite data monthly revisit is very, very doable, even weekly with Copernicus Sentinels. Then the price per area is at least an order of magnitude better than with airborne or terrestrial in situ measurements. And last but not least, it is uniform data globally. And if you know that everywhere is the same data and it's also often free and open data policy, then to do the third-party validation, it's much easier. And this is the key point for trust. As an opposite, that somebody says that I have some Excel table, what I took from my register, and then you have to believe it or not. But with satellite data, you can, if you like, you can take the very same satellite data and compute yourself. Then I'm talking about terrestrial carbon stock estimation. I mean with it that we don't touch the oceans here. But this is already complex enough. It can be divided into above ground biomass, often abbreviated as AGB. I don't like acronyms. That's why I like to write out long, because acronyms can have double meanings. All the people might not know the acronyms and so on. So that is, of course, this above ground biomass. It's forest, agricultural biomass, grasslands, grass, and so on. Then there is roots underground, and then there is, of course, soil biomass, which is also part of terrestrial biomass. And then finally, there is also fauna, all the livestock, wild animals, rabbits, and so on, but maybe we don't go into this yet. I'm sure people have tried to estimate how much biomass there is. Let's start from the above ground biomass. So this is the trees, the agricultural crops, the grass, the bushes, what is on top of the surface. And there are a list of methods how to assess it. Perhaps the most widespread method is to estimate it with proxy methods via optical reflectance or SAR backscatter. And why it is proxy? Because there is a relation of depending on what is the spectrum of the vegetation or what is the radar backscatter of the vegetation. But it is not directly proportional to this. It is just some empirical relation what is fitted, that we know that kind of like this tone or this backscatter or this texture area on the satellite image most likely corresponds to that level of biomass. And this sets the inherent accuracy limit, because it is not there is no direct relation there. Then second, and a little more accurate method to do is to do via direct measurement of the biomass height and volume. And for this, one can use LiDAR data or interferometric SAR data. It is a bit more advanced, but the problem is that there is lack of data. Space LiDARs meant for biomass mapping, there are very few. There is one new constellation planned, but I will talk in a few slides time. Then a third method is via physical modeling, via net and cross-primary reproduction, using, for example, MODIS data, but you can also use Sentinel-3 OLSI data. And this is based on the fact that you know the incident spectrum of the sunlight, and then you measure what is reflected back from the vegetation. And by the differences of the spectrum, you know that which part was absorbed of this photosynthetically active radiation, and then hence this part of this energy was used for growing biomass. One can do this way also. One drawback for this is the cloud cover. Another one is that we directly measure only the midday one when the satellite takes the image, and the rest of the time we just have to model. This, of course, introduces uncertainties. Root biomass to measure directly from the satellite, I am not aware of any method. It's the only way is via modeling, knowing the above ground biomass, and then allometric formulas, knowing the species, the age of the canopy, and the soil type. Soil type or soil biomass is also the simplest way is to go via modeling. And this is also the only method if you want to model the soil biomass under the vegetation cover. That we know the above ground biomass, its species, the age and soil type, and then we model the soil biomass. But one can also measure the soil biomass directly in case there is bare land, and it's growingly exciting and active field of research thanks to the emergence of hyperspectral imagers. And there will be new both governmental missions coming up and also commercial constellations, for example, Kuvaspace one from Finland. So with hyperspectral analysis, you can tell pretty accurately the soil carbon amount on the top layer, of course. And the lower parts, again, you have to model. So this was a very brief systematic overview of how the terrestrial biomass was is assessed currently. In case you have questions later on, I'm happy to dive in. Then briefly about the state of the art, what one can do with satellite data to assess the terrestrial carbon stock. The best methods you can get down to 25 to 30% error. In case you don't have so ideal input data, the error might be 40, sometimes even 50%. And often airborne or drone LiDAR is used as the ground reference. Some people use the term ground truth. I like ground reference more because truth is something what we can argue a lot about. But ground reference says that this is just another data set. We don't know if it's true, but this is a reference data set. Then they use AI to capture the empirical correlations best. When there is a correlation, then deep learning models are among the best to capture this correlation. And obviously, multiple orthogonal data sources are better than just a single one. For example, our company, I don't know any end user model we do what uses only optical data or only SAR data. We always combine, and always the combined data set provides higher accuracy results. The best methods take advantage of the direct forest height and volume measurements, most notably Getty LiDAR and tandem-X interferometric SAR. And this is also the reason why I am so excited about the proposed 3D SAR mission, what I'm going to talk in the second part of the webinar, because all of this reflectance and SAR backscatter methods are just proxies. There is just some empirical relation, but no direct relation. But if we could physically measure the height of the vegetation, we could just improve the errors from 30% down to below 10%. And this is a huge step forward. One problem, one could ask that, hey, but tandem-X is already there. It's providing the data. Yes, tandem-X is there, but the volume of data it produces is just tiny for operational applications. It is good enough to do research and prove it works. We have all done applied research on this data, and my colleague Aire Olesk defended doctoral thesis on this, and his articles are well cited. We know it works, but just we need to upscale it. We need to make a data factory, and that's exactly what we want to do with our prepared mission. Here is a table of relevant satellite missions. Left column is the method, which method you would like to use to estimate terrestrial carbon stock. The middle one are the current missions, which are most used, and the right one are the future missions. Perhaps from the future missions, NISAR is the most exciting one because it is already ready. And 2 weeks ago, I was speaking with some NASA guys in ESA Fringe conference, and they said the satellite is ready. It will be launched early next year, and the data will be there end of next year. But other missions here listed are a little further future. I'm not going to read the table. If you have questions, then later on I'm happy to answer them. To the second part of the webinar. What we see as what is missing. This mission is missing to make the terrestrial carbon stock assessment way more accurately than it's currently done. And I am pushing it as long as it will be, as long as it is the best combination for accuracy versus price. And with relatively low investment, if we can do it with new space means, it will cost about 20 million euros. We can extend, we can augment the data Sentinel-1 gathers with accompanying satellites and add the height dimension there, making the data so much more valuable. And yeah, we are currently preparing the phase 0 of the mission. And this would create a truly global, comparable, accurate, and affordable data set for carbon stock estimation. By just physically measuring the height of vegetation. There are, of course, LiDAR altimeters, but their spatial coverage is way, way worse. They're just measuring some spots right under it, but this is measuring huge rasters, 250 kilometers swath. Here is one example of what we can do with this data. We cannot go with a single tree level because the resolution of this data is 5 by 20 meters, and as it's radar data, it's speckled. We have to take many pixels to say something more trustworthy. So the spatial resolution of the end product is about 0.5 hectare. And but with parcel level, one forest parcel larger than 0.5 hectare, we can say its biomass and carbon stock with about 10% error. And we know it works thanks to the experiments done with tandem-X data. It works at least in temperate and boreal forest. For agricultural biomass with slightly larger errors, but we know it works really well in terrestrial and in temperate and boreal forest. Here is a list of applications this mission will enable. Assessing the tree height, the biomass, the stem volume, and the carbon stock is not the only application. It also has a military application. It can also be used changing the configuration of the passive receivers. It can also be used to estimate ocean currents, which is not my expertise, but we have the partners in our team. And also this biomass estimation has multiple outputs. One can argue that this voluntary carbon markets, their future is dark and this will not go on. But in any cases, we need to understand our planet better. And for climate policies, in the future, when the economy switches from oil and gas-based economy to biomass-based economy, circular economy, agri and forest biomass, then this is a resource. And our mission will be a very good tool to map this resource. This is the status where we are in September this year. We have hired mission architect and mission manager. They will join in October and November respectively. And we will start the phase 0 later this year, mapping the user requirements and developing the relations. We will plan alternative mission concepts and create a catalog of space hardware partners and develop the relations to start the actual building of the satellites. And that is all. Contact me if you would like to team up for the market analysis. If you would like to use our future data products of the carbon stock estimate, but why not forest inventory? We can say also the stem volume of a forest parcel with about 10% error. Or if you would like to invest into us in the next phase when we start to build the satellites and the ground segment. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kappa. That was a really fascinating talk, and I can see that we've got a lot of questions from our audience, but as the chairman, the privilege of asking the first one is going to fall to me. And I must admit, I am in awe of how rapidly the tools and techniques for remote sensing have progressed over the last few years. And, you know, it's really driven by the explosive growth of the commercial space sector. But who do you see as your primary clients, and who do you think the beneficiaries of this wonderful technology are?
I think still governments will be there as the direct clients, but also the clients who are behind our clients, but also companies who operate on really large areas, forestry companies, for example.
Fantastic. I mean, it strikes me that you know, one of the potential uses, you were talking about measuring the composition of soil over large areas. Presumably, this could be used for hunting for rare earth metals or lithium or things like that, because you'd be able to actually trace the spectrum within the soil.
That is correct, but not with this mission, what we proposed.
So, very much so, yeah. Now, I'm aware that the governments are hoarding
So to
huge.
trace the metals, for example,
Excellent. Sorry, you
you
broke
need
up
to
a little
go
bit.
with the hyperspectral Kuva space. And we could help to analyze the data, but we would not.
Excellent.
I will try to turn off the webcam.
Fantastic.
Is it
Now,
a bit
I know
better
that
now?
governments are hoarding huge databases of remote sensing data from decades of satellite monitoring. What can be done to force them to set this data free so that companies and academics can actually use it to develop new products and services? Is there anything that can be done, say, for example, at the European level to try and force the governments to part with this data?
I think just to pass our message very clearly and come together with roof organizations and then be very clear about it. And that satellite data should be as public good, or in case of commercial missions like this our proposed mission, I see the future that governments could purchase it and then spread it for free.
How sensitive is your instrumentation? Are you using machine learning to refine your models?
Absolutely. There is no end user product which doesn't use machine learning in our case.
And what advantage does satellite monitoring have over suborbital platforms such as aircraft or drones? Why do you have to use satellites for this type of work?
Because it's inherently global and it covers huge areas. With airborne means or drones, you are always in local area, and to scale up to global level to cover whole countries or even regions, it's just not feasible in the near future. If you want to do real business, real operational services, we have to use satellite data.
Absolutely. So what are the limitations and challenges associated with using satellites to assess carbon stocks, and how can these obstacles be overcome?
I would say that the main obstacle is really currently the accuracy. And that's why we propose this Sentinel-1 3D mission to improve the accuracy from 30% to 10% with clever and reasonable investment. So besides accuracy, I don't see any other drawback at the moment.
Now, there was a fascinating article that I read in the FT this morning regarding the need for a thorough review of insurance in the space sector. Have you come across any issues with respect to insurance, and what are your views on this subject?
We haven't gone to the insuring our space assets yet. When we will start to build this mission, we definitely need to insure the launch and then probably also the satellite. And it's been traditionally reverse calculated from the success rate of the launch vehicle. And we all know Europe has its policy trying to prefer European launchers. And with this Vega C currently the second launch failing, its success rate is 50%. And this, of course, makes the insurance premiums crazy. So it raises a lot of questions, and it raises the questions of whether for new missions it should be computed the same way as for old missions.
Do you think there's a case for state insurance of satellite missions? I mean, can the commercial insurance market actually underwrite these missions in an economic way? Is insurance going to become the rock on which the ship of the commercial space sector founders?
I haven't thought much about it, and I don't have strong views about this question.
Okay. Moving on now. I think there's a really fascinating story in how you set up your company. How did you come to move into the commercial space sector?
I started as a junior researcher, and I wasn't doing that bad. I was doing actually pretty well, but I didn't get satisfaction from it because I saw all the people around me in the conferences trying to model the future 25 years in advance. On paper, building beautiful systems. And I saw that less than % of it was maybe ever realized. And they did it for the beauty of the maths, the physics, which of course is nice, but I wanted to really serve the community and create real tangible results for society. And that's why I decided to so-called to come down from the ivory tower and face these difficult organizational issues, start to build the team, talk with the clients, and so on. That's my story. I wanted to do real life applications.
And what kind of obstacles did you face on the road to establishing your company? How did you sell this?
Actually, for our case, it wasn't like that. Let's start a company just to have a company. We had the first client first. Estonian government, the agricultural subsidy checks unit. I'm sure there is a similar office in UK. We were already doing applied research for them, and now the time came to start to provide actual service. And then we thought it makes much more sense to do it as a company and not as an institute. So we had the paying customer basically from day one.
That's the best way to start, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And only this year we raised our first investment, not only because even that we badly needed it to survive, but just to grow faster.
Fantastic. Well, we wish you all the best for the future, and we do hope that we're going to see your company grow and become a leader in this field. Now, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, that the time has caught up with us, and I know that some of you have still got questions to ask. Please do contact CalPERS to continue this discussion. You can email us and we'll pass your questions on, or if you have a look at CalPERS slides, there are contact details there. We're going to be posting the recording of this presentation online in the next couple of days, so you can revisit what our speaker has said. And it just remains for me to thank the members of the FS Club for making today possible. I'd also urge you to keep an eye on our forthcoming events page for more webinars, which are going to include the launch of the 34th edition of the Global Financial Centres Index, which is taking place tomorrow. We've got a fascinating webinar on a new regime for environmental law, which is taking place on the 5th of October. Looking further ahead, we've got Banking on AI, the latest customer research, on the 10th of October, and Financial Centres of the World Focus on Bermuda on the 18th of October. You can catch up with all our previous webinars on YouTube, on our LinkedIn channel, and our Pizzazz TV channel. We do hope we're going to see you again soon. Thank you very much to all of you for all your excellent questions. Thank you to Calpo for a fascinating presentation. I wish you all goodbye and a pleasant rest of your day. Cheerio.